It looks like a pickup truck, but only for the first second. After that, something starts to feel off, like your eyes are seeing a truck, but your brain is refusing to fully agree with what it's looking at. And the longer you stare, the worse it gets. This is the 1961 Ford F100 unibody, one of those rare moments in automotive history where a big idea collided head-on with everyday reality, and neither side wanted to back down. Ford didn't design this as a mistake, they designed it as progress, a cleaner, stronger, more modern pickup truck that would move away from the old-school cab-bolted-to-bed formula and into something smoother, more unified, more advanced. On paper, it sounded like the future had finally arrived in the truck world. In real life, it looked like the truck had been smoothed too aggressively, like someone took an already familiar shape and erased the most important lines that told your brain what it was supposed to be. Because the unibody idea was simple but radical. No separation between cab and bed. Everything becomes one continuous shell of steel, one structure, one identity. No gaps, no breaks, no visible division between workspace and cargo space. And that's where the trouble began. Trucks are not just machines, they are visual promises. You look at them and immediately understand their job. The cab is where the human lives, the bed is where the work happens. That separation is not just mechanical, it's psychological. It tells you how to trust the vehicle. The F100 unibody quietly removes that language, and suddenly the truck stops speaking in familiar terms. From the front, it still behaves itself. Classic Ford face, round headlights, simple grille, honest and straightforward. For a moment, you almost believe the criticism might be exaggerated. Then you move to the side, and everything changes. The body stretches out in one continuous flow, and instead of feeling strong or futuristic, it starts feeling slightly confused. The cab and bed don't just connect, they melt into each other in a way that removes contrast. And without contrast, your eyes lose reference points. Without reference points, your brain starts searching for meaning that isn't clearly there. It doesn't feel wrong because it's ugly in a traditional sense. It feels wrong because it doesn't feel divided correctly. Like a sentence with no punctuation, just words running together, technically readable but mentally exhausting. Then you walk to the rear and the confusion doesn't disappear, it deepens. The bed doesn't sit like a separate working element anymore. It feels like an extension of the cab that never was allowed to become its own space. The proportions feel long, slightly stretched, almost like the truck was designed first as a smooth body and only later asked to behave like a work vehicle. And that mismatch is exactly what made people stop and stare in the early 1960s. Because buyers didn't just want innovation, they wanted familiarity with strength. A pickup truck had to look like it could survive abuse, not like it was trying to impress a design studio. Ford engineers actually had solid reasoning behind it. A unified body could increase rigidity. It could reduce flex between cab and bed. It could make the structure feel tighter, more solid, less prone to the rattles that older trucks were known for. In theory, it was an engineering improvement disguised as styling evolution. But the problem is simple. Most buyers don't experience engineering. They experience first impressions. And first impressions don't read spec sheets. They read shapes. And this shape told a story people weren't ready to accept. Some owners later admitted the truth quietly. Mechanically, the truck was fine, even good. It felt solid on the road, less separation noise, a more planted feeling compared to older F-Series models. But emotionally, something never fully clicked. I trusted it when I drove it, but I never trusted how it looked standing still, one owner reportedly said. And that sentence explains everything. Because a pickup truck lives two lives, one in motion and one at rest. And if either one feels wrong, the illusion breaks. The F100 unibody never broke mechanically. It broke visually. And that's why it became one of those strange machines that sits in automotive memory, not as a disaster, not as a success, but as a moment where design logic and public expectation drifted in completely different directions. Ford eventually moved away from the unibody idea, returning to the more traditional separate cab and bed layout that buyers instinctively understood and trusted. And with that decision, the experiment quietly faded into history. But it never disappeared emotionally, because even today, when you see one parked, you still get that same split-second reaction. Something about it looks modern for its time, but also slightly alien in its proportions. Something about it looks like progress, but also like a question that was answered too quickly. And that's why the Ford F100 unibody still survives in conversations decades later. Not because it was the best, not because it was the worst, but because it is one of those rare trucks that still makes people stop, look twice, and ask the same quiet question Ford never was able to fully escape. It drives fine, it works fine, but was the world ready to see a pickup truck that had no visible separation between its strength and its purpose? Or did Ford simply arrive with the future just a little too early and a little too clean for its own good? It looks like a normal early 70s Ford heavy-duty pickup from far away. Nothing strange, nothing unusual, just a big, square, hard-working truck, sitting still like it belongs on a farm, a job site, or towing something serious. But then you walk closer, and the first thing your eyes start to question is not the engine, not the badge, not even the cab, it's the length. Because the 1971 Ford F350 Super Camper Special doesn't just look long in the usual big truck sense. It looks long, like someone took a normal pickup truck, grabbed it from the front bumper and rear bumper, and slowly stretched it until the proportions finally gave up trying to stay normal. And Ford didn't deny it. They designed it exactly like that on purpose. This truck wasn't made to look good in a showroom. It wasn't made to win design awards. It wasn't even made to feel compact or convenient. It was made for one very specific and very heavy reality of the early 1970s, massive slide-in camper units that were turning ordinary pickups into mobile homes, whether the trucks were ready for it or not. So Ford built something that could survive that reality. And in doing so, they created one of the most visually exaggerated factory pickup trucks ever sold to regular people. At first glance, from the front, everything feels almost normal. Classic Ford face, big rectangular grille, round or square headlights depending on trim, a stance that says work truck in a very straightforward American way. Nothing here warns you about what's happening behind the cab. And that's exactly where the surprise begins. Because once your eyes move past the cab, the entire truck changes personality. The bed doesn't just sit behind it, it extends behind it like it is continuing a thought that never ends. The wheelbase is stretched so far that the rear wheels feel almost disconnected from the idea of where the truck body wants to go. It creates a visual imbalance that your brain keeps trying to correct, but it can't. Every instinct you have about pickup proportions gets challenged at once. Normally, a pickup truck has a very readable structure: cab, bed, rear axle, overhang. Simple, clean, predictable. Your brain processes it instantly. The Super Camper Special breaks that simplicity in a very specific way. It doesn't remove parts, it just expands one part until it dominates everything else. The bed becomes the main character of the entire vehicle, and the further back it goes, the more it stops feeling like a bed and starts feeling like a runway extension that accidentally got classified as cargo space. From the side profile, the effect is almost surreal. The cab looks like it belongs to a normal heavy-duty Ford, but the bed feels like it belongs to a different design language entirely. The gap between them isn't physical, but it feels psychological, like the truck was built in two emotional phases: normal work truck, and then let's keep adding length until the camper stops killing the rear suspension. And that's not an exaggeration of intent. The engineering reason behind it is very real. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, slide-in campers were extremely popular in North America. Families would load these huge fiberglass or aluminum camper shells into pickup beds and turn them into temporary homes. But there was a major problem: weight distribution. Most of the mass sat far behind the rear axle. That caused dangerous handling, front-end lift, and instability at highway speeds. Steering became light, braking became unpredictable, and the trucks, originally designed for loads centered closer to the cab, were suddenly dealing with something more like a shifting apartment sitting behind them. Ford's solution was not small, it was structural. They extended the wheelbase significantly so that the rear axle could sit in a better position relative to the camper's weight. They reinforced the frame, they adjusted suspension geometry. They essentially said, if the load is going to be huge, the truck must become huge in response. And the result is exactly what you see. A truck that doesn't just accommodate a camper, it is shaped by the expectation of always having one. Without the camper installed, the truck feels strangely empty, not just physically, but visually. The long rear overhang doesn't feel like extra space, it feels like unfinished business, like something heavy is missing that the entire structure was emotionally built around. It's one of those rare vehicles where the absence of its intended load changes its identity completely. On the road, the Super Camper Special would have felt different from a standard pickup in a way you could not ignore. The long wheelbase would improve stability when loaded, making highway driving more controlled. It would reduce some of the rear-end bounce that shorter trucks experienced under heavy camper weight. But it also came with compromises. Turning radius became noticeably larger, parking became a planning exercise rather than a simple action, tight urban spaces became almost hostile environments. Owners had to think ahead constantly, not just can I fit, but can I get out after I fit? And yet, despite all of that, many owners appreciated it exactly for what it was, a specialized tool that didn't pretend to be anything else. One owner described it in a way that sticks with you. It doesn't feel like a normal pickup. It feels like a platform that happens to move. And that is probably the most accurate emotional description of the Super Camper Special. Because the longer you look at it, the more it stops feeling like a single idea and starts feeling like a compromise that became permanent. A machine built around a problem so specific that it had to distort its own proportions to solve it. The front is familiar, the cab is functional, but the rear is where the philosophy of the entire truck reveals itself. It is not just extended, it is committed, and that commitment is what makes it unforgettable. Because even today, decades later, when you see one parked without a camper, the same thought returns immediately, unchanged by time or context. It looks like a truck that is waiting for the weight it was designed around, waiting for the purpose that justifies its length, waiting for something big enough to make it finally feel complete.
It looks like a normal compact car from the early 1980s until you notice the back. And that's when your brain pauses for a second, because what you're seeing doesn't fully fit into any category it knows. This is the 1983 Dodge Rampage, and it is one of those rare vehicles that looks like it was designed during a meeting where nobody fully agreed on what it was supposed to become. At first, the idea sounds almost logical. Small car platform, light-duty pickup utility, cheap to build, easy to drive, fuel efficient. In theory, it's the perfect answer to people who want a little truck without the size, weight, or cost of a real pickup. So Dodge took a front-wheel drive compact car, stretched it slightly, and added a pickup bed to the back. Simple. Almost too simple. Because what came out of that decision wasn't a traditional truck, and it wasn't a traditional car either. It landed somewhere in the uncomfortable space between categories, like a vehicle that couldn't decide what language it wanted to speak. From the front, the Rampage behaves itself. It looks like a fairly ordinary early 80s Dodge compact. Clean nose, simple headlights, no aggressive truck cues, nothing that screams heavy-duty work. It feels light, almost friendly, like something you'd expect to park in front of a grocery store rather than a construction site. But then you follow the body line backwards, and everything starts to feel slightly off in a way that's hard to explain immediately. Because instead of a cab followed by a clearly separate, rugged pickup bed like a traditional truck, the Rampage feels like a hatchback that simply continued too far and forgot to stop. The roofline, the proportions, the overall softness of the shape all belong to a passenger car. And then, suddenly, at the back, there's a small cargo bed attached like an afterthought that never fully integrated into the original personality. It doesn't look wrong in the sense of broken design. It looks wrong in the sense of unclear identity. Your brain keeps trying to classify it. Truck? Not quite. Car? Not really. Utility vehicle? Maybe, but even that feels like a compromise. From the side, the confusion becomes even more visible. The wheelbase is short, almost car-like. The body doesn't sit high like a traditional pickup. There's no sense of towering presence, no feeling of mechanical authority. Instead, it sits low and compact, like a commuter car that accidentally got assigned light-duty hauling responsibilities. And the bed itself doesn't help settle the argument. It's small, shallow, and visually lightweight compared to what truck buyers were used to in the early 1980s. There's no imposing steel mass behind the cab, no long, rugged cargo space that suggests serious work capability. Instead, it feels more like something designed for weekend trips, small loads, maybe a few tools or boxes, but nothing that would ever be mistaken for real heavy hauling. And that's exactly where the Rampage divided opinions so sharply. Because traditional truck buyers didn't just want utility, they wanted identity. A pickup truck wasn't just a way to move objects, it was a symbol of strength, capability, and a certain visual honesty. You look at it and you immediately understand what it can do. The Rampage didn't speak that language clearly enough. It spoke a different one closer to economy cars, personal transport, and light practicality, rather than heavy-duty work. And for many buyers at the time, that created a disconnect that felt uncomfortable rather than innovative. It wasn't that the Rampage was useless. In fact, for its intended role, it worked surprisingly well. It was fuel efficient for a pickup-style vehicle, easy to park, simple to drive in tight urban spaces, and perfectly adequate for light cargo tasks. Small furniture runs, garden supplies, general daily utility work. This is where it actually made sense. But perception matters more than specification in the pickup world. And perception is where the Rampage struggled. Because when people looked at it, they didn't see a truck that had been downsized intelligently. They saw a car that had been awkwardly modified. Some owners appreciated exactly that honesty. They didn't need a full-size pickup. They didn't want the cost, the fuel consumption, or the size. For them, the Rampage was practical, affordable, and easy to live with. But others couldn't get past the feeling that it looked like something that had been assembled from two different ideas that never fully agreed on the final design. One old comment from an owner captured it perfectly. "It's useful, but it never feels like a real truck. It feels like my car is trying to help me move things." And that sentence explains the entire identity of the Rampage. Because even though it technically delivered on its concept, emotionally it never fully crossed the line into truckness. It existed in a strange middle ground where everything functioned correctly, but nothing fully matched the expectations people brought to it. And that's why even today, the Dodge Rampage is remembered not as a failure and not as a success, but something more usual. A vehicle that tried to merge two worlds, but ended up sitting permanently in between them, looking like a hatchback that woke up one day and found out it had become a pickup without fully understanding why.
It looks like a tiny delivery van rolled into a pickup truck dealership by mistake. At first, your brain doesn't even register it as a normal truck. It just pauses, because nothing about the 1967 Dodge A100 pickup fits the mental picture of what a pickup is supposed to be. This thing looks like it came from a different design universe entirely. A universe where trucks were not stretched, not lifted, not aggressively styled, but simply compressed until only the most essential shape remained. And what's left is something strange, very strange. The Dodge A100 is a cabover pickup, which already breaks the first rule of traditional truck design. There is no long hood stretching out in front, no engine sitting far ahead of the driver like a mechanical shield. Instead, the engine is pushed backward, sitting under or just behind the front seats, which forces the entire cabin forward over the front axle. And that one decision changes everything. Because the moment you move the driver's seat on top of the wheels, you change the emotional experience of the vehicle completely. You are no longer sitting behind the machine, you are sitting on it. From the outside, the effect is even more dramatic. The front end is almost completely flat, like someone looked at a standard vehicle and decided that depth was optional. There is no long hood to visually explain what's happening under the bodywork. The truck face drops almost straight down, creating a shape that feels more like industrial equipment than automotive design. And then there's the windshield. Huge, almost exaggerated in proportion. It doesn't slope like a muscle car or extend like a traditional pickup. It just rises up, tall and wide, giving the whole front of the vehicle a slightly startled expression, like it is always aware that it looks unusual but has decided not to apologize for it. From a distance, the A100 doesn't look like a pickup competing with other pickups. It looks like a compact delivery box that somehow gained independence and started driving itself. The proportions are the real shock. Traditional pickups in the 1960s were defined by separation: engine up front, cab in the middle, bed at the back. 3 distinct sections that your brain reads instantly. That structure creates visual confidence. You see it and immediately understand weight, power, and purpose. The A100 removes that entire language. Instead of 3 clear sections, everything collapses into one compact block. Cab and engine merge, driver and front axle align almost vertically. The bed feels like an attachment to a body that was never designed to stretch in the first place. And that's why people either loved it or couldn't quite understand it. Because when you stand next to an A100, you don't feel like you're looking at a scaled-down version of a normal truck. You feel like you're looking at a completely different philosophy of vehicle design. Even the driving position reinforces that feeling. Sitting almost on top of the front wheels changes your perception of movement. You don't feel like you're guiding something in front of you. You feel like you are part of the front of the vehicle itself. Steering inputs become more direct, more immediate, sometimes even slightly unsettling if you're used to conventional pickup layouts. In tight city environments, this design actually made sense. The short wheelbase and forward cab position made it extremely maneuverable. It could turn in spaces that bigger pickups would struggle with. It could slip through narrow streets and fit into urban delivery roles long before compact utility vehicle became a marketing category. But practicality is only half the story, because emotionally, the A100 never really tried to look normal. From the side, it almost feels like a metal cube with wheels. The bed is small, almost proportional to the cab in a way that feels balanced but unfamiliar. There is no long rear extension, no muscular overhang, no attempt to visually imitate full-size trucks. Instead, everything is compressed, tight, and almost utilitarian to the point of being visually blunt. It doesn't pretend to be powerful, it pretends to be efficient, and that's a very different message for a 1960s pickup truck. One owner once described the experience in a way that captures it perfectly. It felt like driving a van that decided it didn't want a roof anymore. And that is exactly the feeling the A100 gives you, because it doesn't try to be a traditional pickup trying to look tough. It behaves like a utility shape that never was interested in pretending to be anything else. Of course, this honesty also created its biggest challenge. Truck buyers in the 1960s expected presence. They expected a certain visual weight, a certain separation of mechanical components, a sense that the vehicle was built to endure punishment through obvious structural cues. The A100 had strength, but it didn't advertise it in the traditional way. Instead of long hood intimidation, it offered compact efficiency. Instead of stretched proportions, it offered tight packaging. Instead of visual aggression, it offered functional simplicity. And for some buyers, that was refreshing. For others, it was confusing. Because when you removed all the traditional pickup cues, what remained didn't look like a weaker truck. It looked like something that had skipped the entire evolution process and jumped straight into a different category altogether. A delivery box, a city utility cube, a refrigerator on wheels. Even today, when you see a Dodge A100 parked next to a conventional pickup, the contrast feels almost comical. One looks like a familiar symbol of American truck culture. The other looks like it arrived from a parallel design timeline where trucks were optimized for space first and identity second. And yet, that's exactly what makes it memorable. Because it didn't try to be a slightly different pickup, it tried to be a completely different idea of what a pickup could be. Small, direct, mechanical honesty without visual tradition. And in that sense, the A100 is not just a weird-looking truck. It's a reminder that sometimes automotive design doesn't evolve in straight lines. Sometimes it folds, compresses, and reshapes itself into something that feels almost wrong at first glance, until you realize it was simply following a different logic than the one you expected. It looks like a normal mid-70s American coupe cruising down the street until you notice the back half. And that's where everything starts to feel slightly wrong. Not broken, not ugly, just undecided. This is the 1976 Chevrolet El Camino Classic, and it might be one of the most visually confusing ideas Chevrolet ever put into mass production, because it doesn't fit cleanly into any category your brain wants to assign it. It's not quite a car, it's not quite a truck, it's something that lives in the space between the two, quietly refusing to explain itself. At first glance from the front, everything behaves normally. Long hood, classic Chevrolet styling, chrome details, soft 1970s lines that belong to an era when cars still had personality instead of efficiency-first geometry. If you only looked at the front half, you would swear you're looking at a comfortable personal luxury coupe. And that's the trick, because the El Camino is built on exactly that illusion. It starts life as a car, a passenger car platform. Smooth ride, long wheelbase, comfortable interior, something meant for highways, cruising, and presence rather than worksite abuse. And then Chevrolet does something that feels almost too simple on paper. They don't redesign the whole vehicle, they just remove the rear seats and extend the body into a pickup-style bed. And that single decision creates a visual contradiction that never fully disappears. From the side, the El Camino Classic stretches out in a way that feels elegant at first, almost stylish. The roofline flows cleanly, the proportions are long and low, and it carries that unmistakable 1970s American coupe attitude. It looks like a personal luxury car that takes itself seriously. But then your eyes reach the rear, and the entire identity shifts. Because instead of a closed trunk like a normal car, there is a fully open cargo bed sitting where a trunk should be.
Not an integrated SUV-style hatch, not a modern crossover interpretation, but a straight-up pickup bed grafted onto a passenger car body. And that's where the confusion begins. Your brain tries to reconcile two completely different design languages at once. The front speaks in car, the back speaks in truck, and they never fully agree on what they are supposed to be together. From a distance, it almost works. The El Camino Classic looks stylish, even slightly upscale in its 1970s way. It had chrome trim, comfortable interiors, and in some trims, a sense of quiet road presence that made it feel more refined than traditional work trucks. But the moment you thought about function, the contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. Truck buyers look at it and don't see enough utility. The bed is there, yes, but it doesn't have the same rugged separation, the same built-for-punishment attitude as a real pickup like a C-K series. It feels too connected to the passenger car world, too soft in its origin. Meanwhile, car buyers see something else entirely. They see their comfortable cruiser suddenly interrupted by a cargo box that doesn't belong in their mental image of what a car should be. It's the automotive equivalent of wearing a tailored suit with steel-toe boots and trying to convince both fashion worlds that it makes perfect sense. And that's exactly why the El Camino developed its unique identity problem. It wasn't trying to be bad at anything, it was trying to be both things at once. On the road, it actually drove more like a car than a truck, because underneath, it still was a car in many mechanical ways. The ride was smoother than a traditional pickup, the handling felt more controlled, it was comfortable in a way most trucks of the era simply weren't. But the moment you stepped outside and looked at it parked still, identity matters more than performance. And the El Camino never fully settled its identity. Some owners loved exactly that ambiguity. They didn't want a rough work truck, and they didn't want a traditional coupe. They wanted something that could haul furniture on Saturday and cruise comfortably on Sunday. For them, the El Camino was perfect. Others never fully accepted it. One common sentiment from traditional truck enthusiasts at the time was blunt and simple. If I need a truck, I'll buy a truck. If I want a car, I'll buy a car. This is neither. And that sentence stuck with the El Camino for its entire existence. Because even though it was functional, even though it had its place, even though it did exactly what it was designed to do, it never escaped that feeling of being in between categories. The 1976 Classic version especially leaned into comfort and styling, making the confusion even more visible. More chrome, more luxury touches, more emphasis on the car side of its personality. But the bed remained, always there, always reminding you that this was not a pure coupe. From certain angles, it almost looks like a design experiment that escaped into production unchanged. A car that started life in one category and then had a practical idea bolted onto its rear end without rewriting its identity. And that's what makes it so memorable decades later, because the El Camino isn't strange in the way of being extreme or outrageous. It's strange in a quieter way, a more uncomfortable way, a way that makes you keep looking at it from different angles, trying to decide what you're actually supposed to call it. And even now, long after production ended, that question still doesn't fully have a clean answer. It carries like a car, it hauls like a truck, but it never fully becomes either one of them in your mind. It just exists in the middle, permanently split between two worlds, still asking the same question it asked the day it rolled out of the factory. Am I a car or am I a truck? It looks like a normal late 1950s GM utility vehicle from a distance, parked somewhere between a van, a truck, and something you can't immediately categorize. But the closer you get, the more it starts to feel like your brain is trying to solve a puzzle that was never meant to have a single correct answer. Because the 1958 GMC Suburban Carrier doesn't behave like a conventional pickup truck, it doesn't behave like a conventional van, and it doesn't fully behave like a station wagon either. It behaves like all of them at once. And that is exactly where the confusion begins. In the late 1950s, American industry was obsessed with one idea: maximum usefulness in a single machine. Businesses wanted delivery vehicles that could also carry people. Contractors wanted trucks that could haul tools but still transport crews. Cities were expanding, logistics were changing, and manufacturers were experimenting with shapes that could replace multiple vehicles with just one. So GMC built something that was meant to solve multiple problems at once. And in doing so, they created a machine that visually refuses to stay inside a single category. From the front, the Suburban Carrier appears almost van-like in the most basic sense. The face is upright, flat, and functional. There is no long hood stretching forward like a traditional passenger car. Instead, the design pushes everything into a vertical plane, as if the entire vehicle was designed to maximize interior volume rather than external elegance. It doesn't greet you like a car, it presents itself like a box with wheels. Then you start walking along the side, and that's where the design stops feeling familiar, because unlike a pickup truck, there is no clear separation between cab and cargo area. Unlike a station wagon, there is no flowing roofline that gives it a sense of passenger comfort and continuity. Unlike a van, there isn't a smooth, unified sense of enclosed space with modern proportions. Instead, what you get is something much more blunt. A tall, squared body that feels almost architectural, like someone took the idea of a room for transport and simply placed it onto a chassis without trying to disguise its purpose. The proportions are where the strangeness really becomes visible. The height is emphasized, the sides feel vertical, the surfaces are flat and functional rather than sculpted. The wheels look like they are supporting a structure rather than a designed automotive silhouette. Everything about it communicates volume first, identity second. And that is the core issue. The 1958 GMC Suburban Carrier was not designed around a single emotional identity. It was designed around capacity. How much can it carry? How many roles can it perform? How many jobs can it replace? And the answer, from GMC's perspective, was as many as possible. Inside, this made sense. The cabin could be configured for passengers or cargo. The rear space could be used for deliveries, tools, equipment, or mixed use depending on the buyer's needs. In theory, it was one of the earliest attempts at what we would now call a multi-purpose utility platform. But the outside never fully communicates that versatility in a way the human brain finds comfortable. Because humans don't just interpret vehicles by function, they interpret them by shape language. And shape language matters more than technical truth. So when someone looks at the 1958 GMC Suburban Carrier for the first time, the brain tries to assign it to a known category. It scans for clues. Is it a truck? But there's no clear bed, no separated cargo structure, no traditional pickup silhouette. Is it a van? But it doesn't have the smooth, unified proportions that later vans would adopt. It feels more rigid, more segmented in its visual logic. Is it a wagon? Not really, because it's too tall, too boxy, too industrial. So the brain gets stuck. And that moment of hesitation is what defines this vehicle more than any specification sheet ever could. From certain angles, especially the rear three-quarter view, it looks almost like a metal storage container that learned how to move under its own power. The body doesn't taper or flow. It doesn't visually lighten as it rises or extends. It simply exists as a tall rectangular volume mounted on wheels with minimal attempt to soften the edges of its identity. It doesn't lean into speed. It doesn't lean into ruggedness. It doesn't lean into comfort.
It leans entirely into utility, and that is both its strength and its visual challenge. Because utility without clear identity creates ambiguity, and ambiguity creates discomfort in design perception. At the time, however, many buyers didn't care about visual clarity in the same way enthusiasts do today. Businesses saw opportunity, delivery companies saw flexibility, contractors saw a machine that could adapt to different jobs, families in certain configurations saw a practical transporter that could move people and goods in the same platform. But even then, there was always a quiet recognition that this vehicle didn't fit neatly into the emotional language of American automotive culture. One might imagine an owner describing it in simple terms. It's useful, but it never feels like anything specific. And that sentence captures everything about it. Because even though it worked, even though it performed its intended roles, even though it was mechanically capable, it never fully resolved its identity in the eyes of the people who saw it. And that unresolved identity is what makes it linger in memory. Not as a failure, not as a success story, but as a transitional idea made visible in steel. A vehicle trying to be everything at once in an era that still preferred things to be clearly defined. Even today, decades later, when you look at a GMC Suburban Carrier, the reaction is almost the same. A pause, a second look, a moment where your brain quietly rechecks what it is seeing, because it still doesn't fit neatly into a box. It is not a truck in the traditional sense. It is not a van in the modern sense. It is not a wagon in any sense at all. It is simply a machine built to carry as much as possible in as many ways as possible without ever fully committing to how it should be perceived. And that is why it remains so visually unforgettable. Because sometimes the most confusing designs are not the ones that fail, but the ones that refuse to choose just one identity.
It looks like a completely ordinary 1990 Chevrolet square body pickup sitting quietly in traffic. Nothing dramatic, nothing aggressive, nothing that would make you look twice if you didn't already know what it was. And that's exactly where the deception begins. Because the 1990 Chevrolet 454 SS pickup was never designed to look like what it actually is. It was designed to look like something you would underestimate. From a distance, it blends into the world of working trucks so naturally that your brain stops questioning it. Square body lines, simple proportions, familiar Chevrolet face. It looks like a tool, a machine meant for hauling, towing, and spending its life doing honest work at a slow, steady pace. A truck you would expect to see parked near a construction site, not something that would ever try to embarrass you at a stoplight. And that calm visual identity is not an accident. It is the entire strategy. Because under that completely normal exterior sits something that completely changes the meaning of the word pickup. A 7.4-liter, 454 cubic inch V8. And the moment you understand that detail, the whole truck stops being simple. It becomes a contradiction on wheels. On the surface, Chevrolet gave it no dramatic styling cues, no wide body aggression, no exaggerated spoilers or racing-inspired body kits, no visual warnings. Even the wheels and stance remain relatively restrained compared to later performance trucks. Everything about the exterior insists that this is just another workhorse in the long line of Chevrolet pickups. But underneath that restraint is something far more emotional. A big block engine that doesn't care about subtlety. A power plant born from the era when displacement still meant authority, when torque was more important than refinement, and when the simplest way to make something fast was just to make the engine bigger than logic would recommend. And that is where the personality split begins. Because visually, the truck behaves like a background character, but mechanically, it behaves like a lead character pretending to be invisible. The first time you really understand this truck is not when you see it parked, it is when it moves. At idle, it still plays the role of a normal pickup, A slightly deeper tone maybe, a hint of presence if you are paying attention, but nothing that gives away the full story. It sits there quietly, almost politely, as if it doesn't want to disturb the expectations people have already placed on it. But the moment the driver presses the throttle, everything changes in a way that feels almost unfair. Because the truck doesn't gradually reveal its performance, it removes the disguise instantly. The rear squats slightly, the engine note drops into a heavy, serious tone, and the entire vehicle suddenly feels like it is no longer interested in pretending to be ordinary. It moves with a kind of urgency that does not match its appearance at all. And that mismatch is the entire identity of the 454 SS. It is not a truck that looks fast and feels fast. It is a truck that looks normal and then refuses to stay normal. In traffic, that creates a very specific kind of presence. Other drivers see a standard pickup and mentally place it in the slow, predictable category of vehicles. There is no expectation of surprise, no anticipation of performance. It is simply another truck among many. And then it leaves. Not dramatically in a cinematic sense, but decisively. Enough to break the assumption that anything with that shape must behave a certain way. That is why people remember it, not because it was exotic, not because it looked special, but because it consistently violated expectations without ever changing its face. There is something almost humorous about that philosophy when you think about it. Chevrolet didn't try to educate the world that this was a performance truck through styling. They didn't rely on visual language to communicate speed. Instead, they hid everything important under a body that actively discourages curiosity. It's the automotive equivalent of a quiet person in the room who never speaks, never draws attention, and then suddenly says something that changes the entire atmosphere. Owners often describe that contradiction in very simple terms. It looks like my regular work truck until I forget what's under the hood. And that's really the essence of it. Because the 454 SS doesn't try to convince you it's special, it waits for you to assume it is not. And that assumption is where it wins. But there's another layer to its personality that becomes more obvious over time. Because even though it has serious performance potential for its era, it never fully abandons its truck identity. It still rides like a pickup. It still feels heavy. It still carries that square-body Chevrolet honesty that says this is a machine built for durability first, excitement second. So the experience becomes a strange mix. A vehicle that feels slow in its attitude, but not slow in its capability. Comfortable in its appearance, but aggressive in its response. Simple in its design, but surprising in its behavior. And that combination is what makes it stand out in Chevrolet's history. Because it didn't try to reinvent what a truck should look like, it simply proved that appearance and reality don't have to match. And that is why even today when you see one parked quietly, you don't immediately think performance icon. You think normal truck, until you remember what it's capable of. And that memory is always a little delayed, just like the truck intended.